INFJs are very often called sensitive, and we have to very often fight against that stereotype in a negative way because it seems like sensitivity equals being fragile. And we all know INFJs are everything but fragile. But what we do have to think about and what we have to talk about is that this sensitivity is based on our nervous system. It's not so much that our heart is involved that much. That is probably more the case for INFPs or ENFJs. I'm not saying it's not, but what is even more affected by any kind of interaction we have is our nervous system. And that's where our sensitivity becomes this master key that can either make us freeze or that can make us really change our life. We have to understand that there's sensitivity in it. This sensitivity is the reason why we can be so precise, but we also have to understand our shortcomings, meaning we're probably not going to thrive in an environment where there's so much toxic drama, where there are constantly manipulation games going on and whatever it may be. We understand what's going on, but this leads to overload of our system. This is not the environment where we thrive the best. We as INFJs thrive the best where our sensitivity, the precision that we bring, can actually have the impact that we're capable of. So let's talk about how to use our sensitive nervous system as a tool, how to use it as a skill in order to create a life that not only feels exciting, but is a representation of how powerful that tool actually is. Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you haven't done this so far, to download the free poster on INFJ Mastery. Also check out the course on the 10 principles of energy mastery for INFJs, and you can also work with me one-on-one. Everything you need to know, you can find through the links in the description. Fine-tuned awareness. So because our nervous system is so sensitive, we actually pick up a lot of information. You can, compare it to some kind of tool that is just calibrated in a very sensitive way. So you can pick up nuances that others miss. You're probably going to be able to pick up way more information than somebody who can maybe take a lot of energy, who can take a lot of toxic energy, of energy that isn't pretty or nice or comfortable. We probably will get overwhelmed from that much quicker. That's why the INFJs typically leave parties rather early. But on the other hand, we're able to pick up nuances if we are in an environment where there isn't too much information, right? This is just awareness. This is not even so much about, other people having to understand it, but we have to understand it. Our nervous system works really, really well in certain situations, but it also has its limits in other situations. And I really had to learn that because for the longest time I thought, well, I can deal in situations that are rather toxic. I know why people are doing this. I used my understanding to protect myself from it, meaning I understood, okay, that's why those people are acting this way. They're not healthy. They don't feel good about themselves. They need to lash out. This is an environment where people have faced a lot of pain, and that's why this is going on around me. But I also had to understand, okay, well, my nervous system cannot handle this. Like, it will actually collapse. This is not made for this situation. And admitting this to ourselves is rather painful because it is an admission of weakness to some extent. But if you look at it from a different perspective, you understand that every system has its weaknesses. If you, for example, are built like a world-class swimmer, you probably have a lot of disadvantages when it comes to running a marathon. Like, we just have to understand in what areas and in what circumstances can we actually have an advantage. And if we put ourselves in environments where how we are isn't being able to be used as an advantage, it's actually a place where we are getting drained, then it's on us to just understand, okay, that's just what it is. Every single system, every single human being has environments where they thrive better and others that are not the best for them. And for us INFJs, I think it's incredibly important to understand we're never going to thrive. We're never going to be, the best we can be. We're never going to enjoy life the most if we put ourselves in environments that are just not, where we will thrive best. I've told you this story many times. I cannot watch trash TV at all. I tried watching those real estate shows because I really like real estate and looking at them, and just like the smallest amount of toxic behavior between cast members is already something I just cannot handle. I don't want to watch it. It makes me uncomfortable. I just have to stay away from that. And in a lot of ways, this closes so many doors, and it feels like, okay, so I actually have to give up on that kind of exciting life. Not that any of us wants like this toxic environment around us, but it's a subconscious understanding of, no, I actually have to close a door on a life that might look like it's more exciting, more vivid, but we have to say, I have to live within the parameters where I thrive the best, where I have the most energy, where I can actually use my skills to create immense impact in my life that makes me feel alive, that makes me create like this epic life. And it's not going to happen in environments where this immense, intense energy that can turn toxic really quickly is like on the forefront all the time. Sensitivity as insight. So sensitivity actually leads to a deep intuition, right? If you are able to pick up so much information over, the decades that you've lived, you build this pattern internally of knowing how things most likely will turn out. You will meet somebody new that, you've never met before. And yes, of course, you're not going to be right about everything, but because you've gathered so much information from the past, from circumstances, from dynamics, there are certain insights that we as INFJs get that most people don't understand where we got them from. This is actually based on our nervous system. We pick up everything like really quickly, and our body picks it up before our mind even does. And we are cerebral beings. We think so much and we stay in our head, but it is our body that feels it first. That's why so much happens on autopilot. We understand when somebody is dangerous. We understand when somebody's trying to hurt us, when somebody's trying to play us. Like all of those realizations happen because we see something a person does, and apparently they haven't figured out that they can be read because they've been able to get through with that so far. And this is not even something where we can make the other person responsible. It's the same thing for us. Until we get mirrored back, I know what you're doing, and like this is what's going on. We can't even realize that we're doing this ourselves. Like I remember, many years ago when I was on vacation with a friend, and afterwards she told me that I was constantly talking about, oh, the weather was so bad and this was so bad. I wasn't even aware that I was in a negative mood. Sometimes awareness is necessary for us to understand, okay, this is what's going on. And that's why so often you meet people and you feel like, why are they trying to play me? Why are they trying to manipulate me? They are not even aware of it. This is just how they've gone through life, and it has worked. And a lot of them are really just not even aware that this is something that they're doing. But the reason why we can pick up so much and why we can build this deep intuition is our sensitivity. It's this backlog of pattern recognition that we have built throughout our life based on all the circumstances that we've been in, based on, the interactions we have had. Like there's just so much knowledge when it comes to this, and we understand things so quickly before our mind can even gather it. And so we have to also look at our sensitivity as one of the big building blocks for us to be able to have that deep of an intuition. And intuition is based on, well, I don't see it as like a fact, but I know that most likely this is how things are, or most likely this is how things are developing, because I have gathered enough pattern recognitional information through my nervous system to be able to think that this is the conclusion of the situation. Recalibration techniques. So a system that is so sensitive can also be overloaded really quickly. Again, please stop looking at this as like a weakness or as something that is second tier. Also, don't look at it as like the one thing, the only thing that matters. It's just in certain situations, we will have naturally an advantage. We will most likely have an upper hand, and it's the best for us and everybody around us if we put ourselves in a situation where we can use our natural abilities. So that also means that we have to recalibrate our system. So this is on the one hand things like mindfulness practices, grounding practices, being in nature, all of that. But it also means, particularly for us INFJs, that we have to look at what kind of life are we building. If we see our big family once a month, because this is what we're used to, and every single time you're there, you're knocked out for a week, then this is something we have to change. We cannot look at our nervous system and say, well, this is just a disadvantage that I have, and then I just have to deal with meeting my family because that's how it is. I get overwhelmed at work, so I just have to deal with it because I have to kind of like pay my bills. Yes, you can deal with all of those things in a short period of time. And if you have no choice at all, of course you're going to survive it. But it's also on us to question, well, maybe a remote job will be the better option for me. Maybe it's better for me if I actually have some distance to my family members, although it's not heard of, because that will help me to be at my best, to not even, be at my best, but better than, what I'm used to. So be honest with yourself. We have to decide what is an environment that makes more sense. So I can talk to you about my situation as an example. So I used to work in consulting in the banking industry, so in a very top tier company. So there's a lot of pressure there. There are a lot of very ambitious people around me. There's a lot of, just like this raw energy that people are not really looking at, does this make me feel good? Am I nice to my coworkers? It's just an environment where you have to be able to stand your ground. And, I was actually able to do that. So I do know a lot of people who get into burnouts because of that, because they feel like, oh, I have to do what everybody else does. We as INFJs, we most likely will be able to set our boundaries and kind of like not get sucked up in that. So for me, that meant I just didn't work after 8 p.m. I don't care how long my coworkers work. If that was a reason for me to get fired, then please. But I knew this is what I personally was willing and able to do in order to stay sane and to stay, in a good space. Because I've seen colleagues who started and after a couple of months, they just were run down. And I've also seen people who've done this for 10, 20 years. And yes, they've been able to stay with it. But with every year, you see how they physically just get worse. So they put themselves in situations where their system is, and they don't have to be INFJs, overloaded by the stress that they put on their system. And yes, we all get older. Yes, of course, we're not going to naturally have the same energy if we do the same things when we're 20 than when we're 40. Like, I get that. But we all know that we can optimize ourselves. And for us, with our nervous system, we have to ask ourselves, what is an environment where I can actually thrive best? And so I started this channel. Then I decided I could do this full time. And so I stopped working in that industry. And I know how many people actually looked at me in a way of, oh, she can't hack it. She just doesn't have what it takes. But that is something where we have to internally really change our perspective, because I know that I thrive best here. I was able to generate more income this way. I was, of course, able to, live out in an environment that is better for my nervous system. And I actually was able to live more in purpose than I used to before. But you're not going to get to this place if you yourself value what your current society tells you is best. Because if you, for example, are this amazing painter, but you think the only thing the world values is you being an accountant, of course, you're going to only focus on that and think the fact that you're an artist doesn't matter. But if you, on the other hand, actually looked at art as something that can transform people, if you actually look at what prices some of the biggest, masterpieces were sold this year, you can change your perspective. You can see that this can be of value, but you have to be the one who defines who you are as something valuable. You can't look at certain people and what they think, because of course, if you're around accountants and this is actually their best skill, they're all going to think this is the most valuable. If you're going to be in the art world, they're all going to think, well, being an accountant is just not something that I would ever want to do. That's a waste of time, right? So it's always a matter of perspective. So when it comes to recalibration techniques, this is not just about, making sure that you meditate or that you sleep well and all of that. It also means to reevaluate what kind of circumstances are repeatedly happening in your life. So a very toxic work environment. Let's think about if there is an alternative. Those family gatherings that are very exhausting. This is not the same thing as having a really uncomfortable one-on-one conversation with a family member. That's going to be really hard on our nervous system, but it will create a boundary. It will change something in the long-term relationship. That's a good thing. We're looking at what trajectory this is going. We want to create an environment where our nervous system is calm and where it can do its best work, using precision and action. So when you actually make this point conscious, so you say, from now on, I'm going to think about where does my nervous system work in best, your life will, change dramatically, because you make the unconscious conscious. You know that this is going to make a difference in your life, and you know this is something you should prioritize. So you actively start looking for ways how you can make your environment, your day-to-day easier. There are certain tasks that I gave off rather quickly. So for example, video editing. Like even in the beginning where like my business wasn't generating money, this is the first thing I outsourced, because for me, being that detail oriented, meaning I have to actually look at the files to this extent, was too exhausting for me. It took so much energy out of my system, and this was not the best place that my, system was being used in. So we can all really make this part of our lives more conscious, to then make choices of what is going to generate the biggest and best outcomes when I work and put my energy into things that are in alignment with, what I can do best. Mastery and empowerment. So once we've been able to make it all conscious, then if we really take action on it, so we do change our job, we do get out of those toxic dynamics that we might have with friends or whatever it is, because we want to bring peace to our nervous system, and then we get into circumstances, we focus our energy on tasks, on jobs, on interests where we can use our skill, your entire world starts changing. I've really seen the difference. And I've seen how, people that I've known for, 20 years, how they developed over the time and how I have developed. And I know that the reason that my life exponentially grew, and in such a positive way that I feel at peace in so many ways and in so many areas of my life, is because I made sure that my nervous system comes first. That I said, yes, sometimes I have to do uncomfortable things. Yes, I will overload my nervous system from time to time, but I'm building a life that is in alignment with like me being at my best. There is no right or wrong here. I really don't believe being an INFJ is like the best thing. And I also don't think that being an INFJ is a disadvantage in life. I do believe, though, however, that we as INFJs, if we want to live the life we want, we have to do things outside of the norm. Because what is best for most people will most likely not be the best lifestyle for us. So remember, if you want some more insights how to master being an INFJ, then first get the free poster on INFJ Mastery. Check out the course on 10 Principles to Energy Mastery for INFJs. And you can also work with me one-on-one. Everything you need to know you can find through the links in the description. And if you want to watch another video now that is in line with today's topic, then check out the video you see on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.